How about that? You like the idea?
Sweden,
We can
Germany.
go with
Alright,
that.
I think I can do that. Alright, so we had Sweden versus Germany, which Sweden won 4-3. We had South Korea have a win by default over Finland. Switzerland versus Lithuania, which Switzerland won 4-0. Chile versus Macau, which Chile won 4-0. France versus Denmark, which France won 4-0. United Kingdom versus Norway, which United Kingdom won 4-0. France versus Mexico, which France won 4-0. Germany versus Italy, which Germany won 4-1. And Brazil versus Switzerland, which Brazil won 4-1.
Yeah, and guys, if you have a moment after this Mappools showcase, because you definitely want to stay here and watch it. After this Mappools showcase, maybe in the week when you find some time, feel sure that if you want to see a match, you have to see Sweden against Germany. Like,
Oh.
you will find out the BODs on Twitch, but that match was just incredible. You have to watch it if you missed it. Along with that, we also had a really cool tiebreakers in the group stage as well, featuring Chile most of the time against Thailand and Australia. A lot of surprises happened in this year on the Mania World Cup. Last year we didn't have a single low seed team into the bracket stage, but now this year we have 4 teams of the high seed getting knocked out. That's a big thing. As you can see, the level of the teams in the whole tournament have grown up so fast in just 1 year. But yeah, with that being said, I don't know if someone wants to add anything else before we go to the Mappools showcase. If we are
I'm not
prepared.
sure there's much else to add, because I think we are actually ready for the Mappools showcase. So, yeah, we will get that all set up and ready for you, and then once it's done, we will have a few more words before we finish up. So.
Hello, Z-Trot here, and welcome to the Mania World Cup 4-Key 2016 Round of 16 Mappools Showcase. The first map we'll be going over is in the no-mod bracket called Liberi Fatali. This one is a really tricky one to time as a whole. There's myriads of long note sections with various releases and unpredictable rhythm structure, bursts, and uncomfortable patterning. This also tests your jacking ability as well. Some sections contain consecutive short jacks at 150 BPM, which can trip up players if they're not expecting them. The Kai section is a whole lot of jack-based stuff mixed with one-hand mini-trilling, which makes it very difficult to time. Some of the long note sections are intuitive, such as the first verse, around 27 seconds through 51 seconds, but there are many sections that do not have intuitive release timing, such as the part after the first verse, the long note section. Some of the 1/6 bursts require a decent amount of mental fortitude as well, as they are essentially trills, which test a decent amount of control. This is especially true for the last 1/6 of the stream for the chart, which are like long 1/6 trills, something that not very many players are necessarily comfortable with. Overall, this is going to be a chart that tests a decent amount of control with jack speed elements mixed in. And our next pick is going to be Tan Bari. Now this is a pretty funny song in my opinion, but it's an accuracy long note pick. Though long note releases in this are still a bit tricky. Most of the first half is fodder with intuitive long note releases, though there are some 1/6 jump stream sections that can be a bit tricky to time, but pretty easy to combo. It's due to its rolly patterning. Now this chart gets considerably harder in the first slowdown as the long note releases in this section become considerably harder. Now, add on to the fact that there are also long notes that are too long to be treated as normal notes and too short to really hold on to, and it becomes something similar to walking on a tightrope. Now the Kai section contains long notes which contain tricky releases which could trip up certain players, which could be crucial as this is an accuracy chart, but it's easily learned. Likewise, the SVs after the Kai section are definitely something that might trip up players on a sight read, but not something that's difficult to learn due to the intuitive stops. The second half will introduce some short long notes which make it a bit harder to time, and it ends with a similar SV section to the right part after the Kai section. This one should be pretty interesting to watch. And our third no-mod pick is Trickstars. Now this is a pure speed pick, guys. Hardest map in the Mappools speed-wise, with multiple long streams at 265 BPM, 1/4s. Now, however, the stream patterns are quite lenient, and the streams are quite spaced out, giving players enough time to recover from each stream. There are some 1/4 jump streams and hand stream sections, but this is overall irrelevant considering that the players will just have more issues trying to get good accuracy on the 1/6 streams rather than the 1/4 jump streams and hand stream sections. The hardest part of this chart is going to be an 8 measure stream, about 200 notes, and a 14 measure stream, about 320 notes after a small break. The transitions in this and overall patterns are quite easy, as they're filled with rolls and triple rolls. This one should be great to see for our high speed players. And our fourth pick is going to be Marble Soda. This one's an accuracy tester, testing burst and flam accuracy, long note releases, and SV performance. The first half of this chart mainly consists of long note release ability, and there are many short long notes and long notes that have unintuitive releases. However, there are also flams mixed with long notes and 1/8 bursts to keep you on your feet even if you're adept at long notes. The first set of SVs is not sight rateable and could create some opportunities for missed timing. causing players to get early misses and potentially lose a round. The second set of SVs is barely sight readable. They're slowdowns mixed with speed ups at times that are not predictable on your first attempt. The third set of SVs will test your ability with slowdowns, testing jump stream and burst ability, and a noticeably lower speed mod. 70% of what a player would be used to, I would imagine. The Kai section is its second hardest part, and it's very consecutive with 168 BPM jump stream, with a long 1/8 burst section as well. The 168 is not a tempo that many players are familiar with, not to mention the 1/8 bursts that are also difficult to get good rainbow accuracy on due to their length. It's also littered with long notes, making it even harder to get a double S on, let alone rainbow accuracy. A miss on this chart would be fatal though, so let's hope our players don't drop.
Am I tripping?
And our fifth no mod pick is Snow Drive. Now this one is an extreme consistency chart, very chord heavy with noticeable long note usage in certain sections. The chord glut patterns tend to alternate between wrist motion or finger motion quite frequently, making it a little bit harder to time than your standard chord heavy chart. This chart's also littered with a lot of 1/4 triples, and the hardest part of the chart, there are occasional 1/4 jump streams running with lenient patterning. While easy to combo, they are difficult to time if players are not familiar with the high tempo due to their rolly nature. The chart also contains various long note sections after the second Kai section, which makes this chart not a complete safe haven for teams who are not very adept with long notes. But hopefully we'll see this one played quite a bit. Only time will tell though. And our 6th Nomad pick is going to be Over the Clouds Burst Mix. Now this is probably the hardest chart to time in the map pool, maybe aside from the tiebreaker. This thing will test everything: SVs, long note releases, speed and chord cohesion, and jacks. Very difficult long note sections right out of the gate, and that fast roll is just too slow to jump trill, but it's close. Most of the SVs, while they don't create that much of a significant effect over overall scroll speed-wise, require a lot of mental fortitude to go through and requires a lot of time investment to actually master. So this one might be a little bit ignored unless they've practiced on it. Most of the patterns are very split prone and there are very few doubles in this chart. Normally this wouldn't be too much of a problem, but all of the jump jacks are very split proning patterns which will usually trip up a lot of players. Overall this is a very varied chart which might be too much for certain players to chew on due to the time investment and the amount of cohesion required in the chart. As a result, this might be a common ban. And for our 7th pick, we have Calamity Fortune. Now this is the 2nd hardest speed pick, though not strictly comparable to Trickstars. There's lots of syncopated rhythms before the midsection, which could make it difficult to time if you're not good at timing non-straightforward rhythms. The midsection also contains a 200 BPM run jump stream of varying density, riddled with very short 1/6 bursts and occasional runs of very dense jump streams. After the 200 BPM dense jump stream run, the chart includes one hand trilly jump streams, hand streams, and longer 1/6 runs. This part could be potentially harder for other players as the patterns in this are more finger-based rather than wrist-based, and demands more overall speed due to the longer 1/6 runs. The chart ends with even more jump streams, so this one will be rough for our players. But I don't see it being too big of a problem, as speed is one of the things that Forky is known for. And for our 8th one, we have Trino Break. Now this chart is quite tame speed-wise, but this chart mainly tests players' ability to perform with extended slowdowns. Outside of that, this is primarily an accuracy chart. The first slowdown in this isn't too bad to manage. Players will have to focus more on aerial cues in this section, so they'll perform well. However, the second slowdown contains a few 1/6 bursts. These can be tricky if the player did not expect the slowdown to begin with, and this might cause them to mess up. There's also some chords which could possibly trip up players as well, as chords are very rarely used in this chart. Outside of the slowdowns, however, this is a very tricky long note chart with a decent amount of long note releases. While they're easy, they're also very frequent, forcing players to stay on their feet. Hopefully we'll see a lot of this one played. And with our 9th pick, we have Rewrite Nightmare, a consistency pick with chord heavy and minor long note usage. The hardest part of this chart contains a straightforward 200 BPM jump stream and bursts that are tricky to nail due to the difficult transitioning of the first half. The jump stream sections are more frequent, longer, and less predictable than Snowdrive, but this is compensated by a considerably lower tempo. The first half contains mainly jump gluts with broken jump streams, which are very manageable for players who have reached this far, but it gets very dense in the second half, introducing triples to the mix. This can be very difficult for weaker players, but is easier for stronger players to time, as wrist motion is used more consistently. Due to how static the chart is and how little long notes are used here, this could potentially be a counterband to band teams who are poor at long notes and stronger at speed.
"あなたはリアルワールドには必要がないんだよ."
And for our last no mod, we have Strav. Now this is the hardest long note chart in the map pool, despite most of the long note releasings having other visual cues like releasing the long note at the same time you're hitting the next chord. The reason why it's so difficult is due to its very unpredictable rhythm, alternating between 3/16 and 1/2, and more with little predictability, unless you've listened to the song enough, of course. The first long note section has a lot of intuitive releases, but since long notes are so frequent, it becomes very overwhelming, and one tiny mistake, such as a misread or a preemptive release, would create a notable damage, which could cost the team their point. The hardest long note section is in a minute in, where the rhythms alternate between 3/16 and 1/2 and 1/4. Add on to the fact that the long notes in this section are also extremely frequent, misreading becomes very, very viable, and players will always almost create mistakes unless they have very good control. The second half of this is fodder, as the jacks are too slow to be difficult, and the long notes are much easier than the ones in the first half. Due to how high risk this chart is, we might see this as a viable ban. And starting off with our Fremont picks, we have Fascination Maxed. Like all Fremont maps, this is an accuracy-based chart, abundant with a 200 BPM jump stream and light rolling patterning, making it a bit tricky to time if you're not used to the tempo. This also contains a decent amount of 1/2 jump gluts, as well as which are pretty easy to time. There is one major jump glut section which contains SVs, which create a bit of a stuttering effect. The SVs are very sight readable, but it could trip up some players who are not acclimated to the visual effects. The chart's rhythms are overall not too consistent, having some consecutive 1/2s and sometimes not, with some 1/3s as well, but it's easy to manage aside from the SVs. This could be a potential counterban against teams who are very good at accuracy. Players are most likely to use Hard Rock for this. And for the second Fremont pick, we have Carrion. Now this is the hardest map in the Fremont pool, both in speed and control required. This will test consistency, long note balancing and releases, and mini jack control. The chart is quite long note heavy, with unconventional long note layering schemes in certain areas, making it a bit tricky to predict and to be comfortable with. There are also occasions where the player has to hit 1/6 burst or hit mini jacks while holding long notes, which could create some release problems. Patterns are also quite split prone, which is emphasized more with some of the mini jacks in the chart, and if you're using Hard Rock. Some of the chords right after the mini jacks are layered 1/6 instead of the conventional 1/4 gap, which could technically trip up some Hard Rock players. Scores on this chart will be considerably worse than the other three charts in the Fremont pool due to the difficulty of the chart. But a ban is unlikely on this because the chart is not polarized to any particular skill and is not difficult compared to the no mod pool. And for our third Fremont pick, we have Sounds of Summer. This is probably the most straightforward chart in the Fremont pool, with extremely consistent rhythms throughout the entire chart. The chord sections are mainly wrist-based, making it very easy to time. The two hardest parts of this chart are the two jump stream runs after each chorus, which test a decent amount of chord cohesion due to the abundance of split jump trills in the jump streams. The second run tests chord cohesion even more, as there's more one-hand trilling required in that section. Flashlights generally disabuse due to the high density of some of these jump stream sections. This should be a fun song to see, nevertheless. And our last Fremont pick is going to be Nightfall. This chart's laced with a lot of mini long notes. 25% of the total notes in this chart are mini long notes. Specifically, the ones that are too long to treat as normal notes and too short to hold on to. This is especially true of players using a mod like Hard Rock, where the long note release timing for a Rainbow 300 is 16 milliseconds instead of 24. The chart also contains some 1/8 flams, which require very precise timing to get full rainbows on. This is actually a rare occasion where Flashlight might actually be more viable for teams who are not very adept with long notes, as the release timing of some of the long notes in this chart would lend them about 200 to 100 scores on Hard Rock, due to how short they are and how it might be better off using a lower speed mod. This is especially true since most of the 1/4 of the notes in the songs are mini long notes, which means their general performance with long note releases of an entire team heavily determines on the outcome of this round. This could be a ban due to how luck-shotty it could be to get a good score on this one. And for our tiebreaker, we have Bakuji no Tabi to Epilogue. Like the previous tiebreaker, this thing's going to test everything: speed, control, jacking ability, long note releases, and balance. There'll be noticeable timing changes throughout this song, which could trip up a player every now and then if they're not ready for them. The only saving grace is that there's no SBs in this chart. Everything's normalized. Lots of tricky non-straightforward sections are present in this chart, and this will require a decent amount of comprehension to chord cohesion, and there'll be noticeable presence of split jump trills and lots of bursts. While this tests long note releases and balance to a decent amount, it doesn't get difficult for one section 45% into the chart, where the inverse long notes are introduced. The second to last section of this chart contains a 250 BPM dense jump stream, which could be a deal breaker for teams who have entered tiebreaker, as not many super strong teams will enter a tiebreaker at this stage. The very ending could ruin some players if they're not careful. A dynamic one-hand trill which has tripped up players in the past and coasted them out of their SS runs. Ironically enough, teams cannot be eliminated, so this tiebreaker cannot be their swan song, or epilogue as you would say. Hopefully we'll get to see the tiebreaker quite a lot in this stage, but if not, well, it's still a really nice song. And with that, that is everything from the round of 16 Map Pool Showcase. Enjoy the rest of the tiebreaker.